Hello, this is Stephen Hawley Martin. Thanks for joining me. Today we're going to be talking with Dr. Laurel Clark, former president of the School of Metaphysics and current executive committee member and secretary of the International Association for the Study of Dreams. If you like today's show, I hope you'll subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are plenty more interesting shows there. Just put Stephen Hawley Martin, that's Stephen with a PH, into the YouTube search and it should pop up. But first, let's get on with the show. Dr. Clark, aren't dreams a way for us to process what's going on in our daily lives?
They are. The School of Metaphysics has been teaching and researching dreams for about 35 years now. And what we have learned is that, first of all, everybody dreams every night. Most people are aware of dreaming occasionally, but some people think they don't dream. And the truth is, we all dream every night. The dreams come from the inner self, what I would call the subconscious mind, and they provide guidance because every dream is about the dreamer. The people in the dreams symbolize aspects of ourselves. The things in the dreams are symbolic that are all telling us about our own attitudes and our own state of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Well, Freud, didn't he say that there were universal images? Is that true, or is sometimes a cigar just a cigar?
There are universal images, and if you think about it, in our waking life, if you think about something like a car, for example, even though there were ages where people didn't have motorized cars like we have now, there still was usually some type of vehicle that was used as a conveyance. It might have been a carriage, it might have been a sled, and the purpose or the function of that vehicle is to get you from place to place. In the realm of the mind, or the soul, if you want to call it that, the vehicle that we use to get from place to place in our daily life experiences is our physical body. So in a dream, when you dream about a car, that is symbolizing the physical body. And one of the things that I really appreciate about dreams is that they can help us to be healthier. So, for example, if you had a dream that you had a flat tire, what that dream is telling you is that there's something going on in your attitudes and the things that you're doing that is affecting your body, and it's going to cause you, if you don't make a change, probably to get sick or to have to slow down and stop. So if you pay attention to the dream and then pay attention to what's going on in your life, you can make changes and produce health before you get sick. The dream doesn't have to play itself out.
Mm-hmm. But I've heard that different symbols may mean different things to different dreamers. You know, like suppose I dream of Uncle Fred. I mean, wouldn't he perhaps be a symbol for something depending on what Uncle Fred meant to me in life?
Yes, and that's a good question. Dreams have, or the symbols in dreams have a universal significance, and the individual dreamer is the one who asks, how does that apply to me? So the universal significance of Uncle Fred is that he's a person, and if it is a male dreamer, another male in a dream symbolizes a conscious aspect. If it's a female dreamer, then a male in a dream is a subconscious aspect. So people of the same gender are conscious aspects. People of the opposite gender are subconscious aspects.
What do you mean by conscious and subconscious aspects?
Conscious is what we're aware of in our everyday waking life. Subconscious is referring to the inner self, or what people would call the soul. In terms of a particular person in a dream, if I dreamed about Uncle Fred, or if you dreamed about Uncle Fred, then definitely how I see him, the qualities that I see that he has, that would tell me what he symbolizes in my dream. And for you, the same thing. Whatever qualities you see in Uncle Fred would tell you what he symbolizes in your dream.
Mm-hmm. You said that everybody dreams every night, and you know, a lot of people don't even think they dream. Is there anything you can do to help yourself remember your dreams?
There is. First of all, it's important to want to remember dreams. And oftentimes the reason why people don't is that they were taught, I mean, most of us, when we were kids, at some time had a nightmare, we probably went into our parents, and in their desire to comfort us, they said, "Don't worry about it, dear. It was just a dream. It didn't mean anything." So that's what we learn, is that dreams don't really mean anything. And if we're busy and have a lot of things going on, why should we take the time to remember a dream if we think that it's meaningless? So the first step is to realize that dreams are meaningful. Every dream is meaningful. And therefore, to want to remember dreams, to gain their insight. Then the simplest way that I know to remember dreams is to get a notebook that you're going to use to journal your dreams. And before you go to sleep at night, you put that notebook by your bed with a pen or pencil, and then tell yourself, either out loud or just silently, "I want to remember my dreams," right before you fall asleep. And then when you wake up in the morning, before you do anything, before you talk to anyone, before you jump out of bed, is write down whatever you remember, because most people actually do have some memory. It might just be a face, it might be a feeling, it could be something really brief. If they write down even the brief fragment that they remember, over time what they'll find is that they can remember more and more of the dream, more and more details. So it's a matter of practice.
I see. What about waking? I've heard that there's eye movement or something, and when people are studying dreams, sometimes they'll see someone go into that phase, and I don't know whether afterwards or during they wake them up to find out what they're dreaming. Is that something that you all have done, and is that something you can do yourself?
We haven't really worked with that aspect of dreams too much. That's a lot of times universities that do sleep studies do things more in that way. Dreaming, or actually sleeping, occurs in 90-minute cycles, and what most people find is that if they wake up, if they don't interrupt the 90-minute cycle, that it's easier to remember the dreams, and also that the sleep is more restful. So, for example, if somebody wakes up after 3 hours or after 6 hours, they're more likely to remember a dream than if they wake up after 4 hours of sleep. But
so in multiples of 90 minutes? Is
right, right, yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh. So you should set your alarm clock so that you'll, would that work? Would that help?
It can work. The thing that works even better is, just like telling yourself that you want to remember your dreams, is to give yourself a mental command that you want to wake up at a certain time, because part of what interferes with dream recall is when someone is in a deep state of sleep and they get jolted awake by an alarm.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can wake up gradually, even if you have an alarm that's, they make ones now that sound like ocean waves, or setting a clock radio to classical music, if you can wake up in a gentle way, it's easier to remember the dream than, being jolted awake to an alarm that it kind of shoves your consciousness into the waking state.
Right. One of the things that I've done in the past is tell myself that I want to wake up at a certain time before I go to bed, and usually that will work. If I need to get up at 6 o'clock, sometimes I don't trust myself. If I have to make an airplane or something like that, I'll use the intrusive alarm clock. But I've found that when I really want to get up at a certain time and I tell myself that, it does work. Is that
right?
That's something you could do, I guess?
It definitely is something you can do, and I think that the more people practice that and expect it to work, the more they find that it does.
Right.
So I actually know people who will set an alarm because, like you're saying, they are not sure that they will wake up. But they set the alarm, and then they mentally tell themselves they want to wake up 5 minutes before their alarm, and usually they find that it works.
I've done that. In fact, I've set them at the same time. I want to wake up at 6, and I'll set the alarm for 6, and it'll be a digital clock, and just as it flips over to 5.59, that's when I'll wake up,
right.
And I'll reach out and, turn it off before it goes on.
Right.
What about colors in dreams? I've heard that sometimes colors have significance.
Well, the color has more to do with how deep a state of sleep the dreamer is in. The most shallow state of sleep, the one that's closest to the waking consciousness, those dreams are in black and white. And as you go into the next inner level of consciousness, those dreams are in bright colors. If you go a step farther, going to an even more inner level of consciousness, those dreams are in pastel colors. And then the innermost level of consciousness, those dreams are all in white. Kind of like the way some movies depict heaven, where things are kind of white and feathery.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why is that, do you suppose?
Well, it's because the subconscious mind, the inner levels of consciousness, have different qualities of energy expression. And so they express themselves in different ways. The more inner, the deeper inward the state of consciousness, the less physical it is, the more ethereal you might call it.
This is Stephen Hawley Martin, and the name of the show is The Truth About Life. We're talking with Dr. Laurel Clark, who's president of the School of Metaphysics. The website for the School of Metaphysics is www.som.org. That's SOM for School of Metaphysics. Tell me, Dr. Clark, what about lucid dreaming? What is lucid dreaming?
Lucid dreaming is, the word lucid means light, and lucid dreaming is having a dream where you, in the dream state, are aware that you're dreaming. And sometimes people who enjoy lucid dreams, because most people find that they're enjoyable, when they're aware that they're dreaming, then will start to change things in the dream. And what we teach people to do in the School of Metaphysics is to first, before changing dreams, to learn how to interpret the symbols, because what happens is that if you make a change in your dream state, it will actually cause a change in your physical life.
Ooh.
And because the dreams are symbolic, if you don't know what the symbols mean, you might not be prepared for the change that's going to happen in your waking life. For example, death in a dream symbolizes change, and animals symbolize habits. So let's say you had a dream that you were being chased by a ferocious tiger, and all of a sudden you realized, hey, this is a dream. I don't have to put up with this. I'm just going to kill this tiger. So you materialize a gun and shoot it. What that means in the universal language of mind, or the symbolic language, is that there's some habit that the dreamer has that's menacing, and they decide that they're going to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And by killing the tiger, they've changed the habit. Well, in the dream, if they don't know what the habit is, they may not be prepared for it. Let's say it was a habit of smoking, and they wake up and, they're used to having a cup of coffee and a cigarette first thing in the morning, so they get their coffee and their cigarette, and all of a sudden they get sick. And the reason why they get sick is because in the dream, they changed the habit of smoking, but in their waking consciousness, they have not mentally prepared yet to let go of the habit.
Wow. So that could be a good thing, of course, if you knew what you were doing, but so how do you figure out these symbols and what they mean, and or is it a good idea ever to change a lucid dream?
Well, it can be. We actually teach our students a step-by-step process, first of learning the symbols, learning how to interpret dreams, and that takes quite a bit of practice, especially to go from just memorizing what the symbols are to then actually learning to understand the whole picture that the dream is painting. It's kind of like learning any language. You can memorize a list of vocabulary words, but most people find that to really learn how to speak another language, the best way to do it is to be around people who speak it, like to go to a country where they speak that language, because it's a matter of really being able to see the pictures in your mind. In terms of the lucid dreams, once somebody has learned the language so that they know what they're causing to happen, then if they want to make changes in the dreams, they can. What we teach people is methods of learning how to have lucid dreams, and in the beginning, when people experience lucid dreams, to just observe what's happening. Kind of like being in a movie and watching the movie play out rather than being the director of the movie and saying, hey, let's make this change here.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this. You said that you teach your students how to have lucid dreams. How do you? What are some of the techniques for having that?
It starts with learning how to be lucid in the waking state. So one exercise that we teach people is either when walking or when driving to describe out loud everything they see. And that might seem like kind of a silly exercise, but you would be amazed at how often you go through life, and you, I mean universally you, people go through life being pretty unaware of what's around them. And I think it's one of the reasons why people like to travel to other places, because usually when someone is in a new place, they tend to notice things. If they've lived in the same place for a long time, they don't even see what's around them. I know that I find that when I ask people for directions, I drive a lot and I travel a lot, and oftentimes the people who can give the best directions are people who have not lived in a place for a long time, because the people who've lived in a place for a long time don't know what the street names are. You know, they know how to get somewhere, but they don't really pay attention to what's around them. So it's paying attention in the waking state is a first step to being able to pay attention in the sleeping state.
One of the things I've noticed in that regard is that if I ride a bicycle somewhere that I usually drive, I see all kinds of things I never noticed before.
Right.
It's I guess, just changing that way of doing it, maybe being more out in the open, obviously, too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about the notion of sleeping on a problem before you make a decision? Does that have anything to do with dreaming? It seems to work for me, but why is that? What do you know about that?
That's a very good question, and it is a good thing to do. What happens during the sleep time is that if we go into a deep state of sleep, we remove our attention from our conscious mind, which is where we reason, it's where we make decisions. We remove our attention from our physical senses, our physical body, and go into the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is a place that we store understanding that we have developed through our life experiences. It's a place that has universal knowledge, and it also is objective. So the benefit of sleeping on a problem is that it helps us to remove our conscious attention from whatever conscious mind opinions or judgments or values we have, and to be able to draw upon that universal wisdom that exists in the subconscious mind. That's what intuition is. It's the direct grasp of truth that comes from accessing the subconscious mind. And that's one of the reasons why, as a person wakes up, if they are able to keep a state of stillness when they wake up and not immediately busy their mind with all the things they have to do during the day, they're able to have access to that subconscious store of wisdom, and sometimes to see things from a different perspective than they had been in their conscious mind.
You know, I talked to a fellow not long ago who wrote a book called Your Gut is Still Not Smarter Than Your Head. And the point of his book, he was a market research person, was that a lot of people make decisions, particularly marketing decisions in businesses, that don't work out, and they make them without doing research, without really finding out what the marketplace wants, and they go with their gut, and it turns out to be wrong. And I was wondering about that, because it seemed to me the way to go was to do the research, was to put all that information into your mental computer, sleep on it or whatever, and then see what comes out. I'm not saying don't do the research and just go with your gut. Do the research, but use it as in conjunction with intuition. Do you feel that your universal knowledge that's there in the subconscious mind is enough, that you don't even need to find out what the market is saying as far as introducing a new product, for example?
No, I think it's very important to use both. That to use reasoning and intuition together is how we're able to have access of the whole mind. And sometimes people tend to be kind of out of balance if they only operate from the subconscious mind. There are people like, kind of the classic picture of a crazy artist is somebody who operates pretty much solely from the subconscious mind, and then sometimes is not very effective dealing with things in the day-to-day life. So you definitely want to use both. In fact, the way that knowledge or understanding that is universal even becomes stored in the subconscious mind is from first using reasoning. So it's very important to be a reasoner in order to even have the storehouse of intuition.
So what you're saying is the way it gets in there is from reasoning that you've done in the past, whether it's this life or some other life? Or...
Right, exactly.
Uh-huh. That's interesting. This is Stephen Hawley Martin, and the name of the show is The Truth About Life. We're talking with Dr. Laurel Clark, the president of the School of Metaphysics. After the show, visit her website, the website for the school. That's www.som.org, School of Metaphysics, som.org. What about, we talked about sleeping on a problem. What about getting ideas, creative ideas? I heard about an artist who gets ideas for paintings by dreaming about an upcoming show. She tells herself to dream about a show she's going to have in the future with paintings she hasn't painted yet, and then when she goes around and looks at the painting, she gets ideas for paintings that she then paints. I mean, is that something that's real that we can do?
Mm-hmm. In fact, just the other night I was talking with an artist who said the same thing, not exactly about shows, but she purposely went to sleep so that she could paint what came from her dreams, and she had a very interesting dream that became a very interesting painting. I know that there are stories of scientists and inventors whose inventions or discoveries came from dreams. For example, the man who discovered the periodic table of elements saw that whole thing in a dream. I think there was only one element that was missing. Abraham Lincoln dreamed of his assassination before it happened. The man who invented the sewing machine, the kind of needle that has the eye at the bottom of the needle, that came from a vision that he saw in a dream. So it's definitely a very valuable resource for all kinds of knowledge.
Now, Abraham Lincoln dreamed about his own death. Are dreams that you have inevitably going to come true, or sometimes is it a symbolic thing? Tell us about that. I mean, that can be scary. I wouldn't, if I dreamt about my own death, my goodness, what could I do about it?
Well, that is a good question. Dreams can be precognitive, which means giving some knowledge about the probable future. I say probable because we have free will, so it is possible to make changes to change the probable course of events. Sometimes when there are disasters that occur, like plane crashes or, some kinds of natural disasters, there are people who will talk about having had a dream. They knew that was going to happen, and they didn't get on the plane that crashed. Or they alerted their daughter not to get on the plane, and the daughter didn't, and so her life was spared. So sometimes dreaming of a probable future that is something we don't want to happen, sometimes it's a kind of, a way of giving us a warning so that we can make a change. Sometimes it's more a matter of helping us to be prepared for something that is not really in our hands to change, but it can just help to prepare us. And most precognitive dreams are not of disasters. A lot of times they're of everyday events, like knowing what someone's going to be wearing at work the next day. And what we have learned about dreams is that all dreams can be interpreted symbolically, and then some dreams, in addition to the symbolic significance, also can be precognitive. And what most people find is that as they practice remembering their dreams and writing down their dreams, they learn to become aware of the difference. There's usually a different kind of quality with a dream that's precognitive, which then can help someone determine what they want to do with that knowledge.
You know, I read somewhere about Edgar Cayce once. Edgar Cayce, for those who may not know, was a psychic who lived during the first part of the 20th century, and probably one of the most famous psychics who ever lived. Gave many intuitive readings, both about people's health as well as other psychological things that were going on in their lives and past lives and so on. And one time, Edgar Cayce was in a department store on a higher floor in the store, and he was going to get on the elevator. And the elevator doors opened, and he looked in, and he saw that the auras of the people in the elevator had a kind of a dark color. I don't know if they were brown or what, but he decided he would not get on the elevator. And just after the doors closed and the elevator started, the cable holding the elevator broke, and it fell. The elevator fell to the basement, and the people in the elevator were killed. So this suggests that those people on the elevator somehow there's something already knew that they were going to die. I mean, can you explain that? Anything about that, Dr. Clark?
Well, if you think about how energy moves, energy always moves in a particular direction. For example, if you had an incline and you had a ball at the top of the incline and let it go, then the ball's going to go down the incline. And that's true of our thoughts. It's true of our attitudes, that according to what we're thinking, according to what we're doing, there are certain lines of probability that determine in what direction we're going to move mentally, emotionally, and physically. And probably one of the simplest ways I think people can relate to this is if you are stressed out, as people would call it, if you're not getting enough sleep, if you're worried, if you're not happy with what's going on in your life, you're not eating very well, you're mentally anxious all the time, the probability is if you keep going that way, you're going to get sick. It might be that you are running around and you get into a fender bender. It might be that you deplete your immune system, and so you end up with a cold or a flu. But in some way, because of the ways that you are wasting energy, you're going to get depleted in some way, and your body is going to say, hey, you have to stop this. So that's not something that, requires someone who's psychic to be able to see that. That's the way that the energy is moving. And that doesn't mean that you have to play that out. You could at any time say, wait a minute, I need to get more sleep tonight, I need to meditate, I need to eat more nourishing food. There's all kinds of things that you can do to change that so that you don't deplete your immune system, you don't get in the fender bender, you don't get sick.
Well, what about these people that were on the elevator, though? They weren't necessarily sick. I mean, did they subconsciously somehow decide to get on that elevator because their time was up, or is there a way to explain it, or is it just a mystery?
Well, what I'm saying is that the fact that Edgar Cayce was able to see darkness in their auras, what he was seeing was the expression of energy that was already existing. As far as specifically what was occurring with those people, I have no idea because I don't know them and I don't know what was going on with them. What I do know from people who have been, like the story of him not getting on the elevator because he had a premonition that it was not going to be safe. The more aware somebody is of their own mind, of mental energies, the more aware they can be of when there are conditions that are not healthy so they can change them. So that's what I'm saying is I don't think that the elevator was the cause of their auras being dark. I think that there was probably already something occurring with each one of them that the line of probability was that they were being depleted, and then the conditions played that out. But any one of them, had they been more self-aware, probably could have made a change.
Mm-hmm. Well, this gets into, I guess, do you believe in predestination, or can the future can be changed, I suppose, if you're saying that, if I'm aware enough, I can realize what's going on and do something about it. But are there, different probable futures? I mean, how do you explain all that?
I would say that there are different probabilities, and that the probabilities all have a cause. The cause being the thought that originates the movement of energy. So when you get in your car and you turn your car in a certain direction, the probability is that you're going to get to the end of the road. Something could happen. You could have a kid dart out in front of your car, and so you slam the brakes on and you don't ever make it to the end of the road. There might be a pothole in the road that you didn't see, and you go into the pothole and it keeps you from getting there. So things can change that, but the probability is if you go in a certain direction that you're going to get to your destination. And in terms of all of our life experiences, most people are pretty much unconscious of the choices they're making, and that's, they're conscious of some of the choices, but they're certainly not conscious of all of the choices, and that's part of the reason why oftentimes people experience their lives as if things are happening to them rather than being aware of how they are causing things to happen or cooperating with things that other people have set into motion. So the more people can learn to develop skills like undivided attention, for example, paying attention to what's around them and paying attention to their own thoughts, the more aware they can become of the probabilities that they're setting up for the future.
Yeah. This is Stephen Hawley Martin, and we're talking with Dr. Laurel Clark, president of the School of Metaphysics. You can learn more about the school at www.som.org. I've heard people say, Dr. Clark, particularly New Age types, that there are no accidents, that there are no coincidences. Is that not true, or is it? What's your position on that?
I think that it is true that there are not accidents. However, I do think that how people experience their lives, oftentimes it is as if there's an accident, and it's because they're not fully aware of what they're doing, what they're thinking, what's happening. I've had times that I have been walking someplace and I trip. And it's not that I purposely tripped, it's that I wasn't paying attention, or I was hurrying, or, I was carrying stuff in my hands going upstairs when I needed to have one of my hands free. So in that way, I think what people experience as an accident or as a coincidence is it comes from being inattentive or unaware in some way.
Mm-hmm. I've also read that our beliefs really can create or do create our reality, that our beliefs are like form an island or a space with a fence around it that we can't get off until we change our beliefs. If we believe that we can do something or that it's possible for us to develop a skill and do something, then we can, and if we don't, we won't. Would that be part of it?
Yes, I definitely think it is. They did a study, it's been many years ago now, that was in a classroom with a teacher who was told that there was one group of kids that was talented and gifted and another group of kids that had a low IQ. And the kids who she thought were talented and gifted did very well, and the kids that she thought were not very bright did not do well. And the truth was, in terms of IQ testing, they were pretty much the same. The difference was her expectation, and that study is often used in teaching people who are educators about the power of their beliefs and how that affects the students that they teach. And that's true of very much of our lives, that according to what we believe about ourselves as well as what we believe about the environment, it has a huge influence on what we experience.
Well, I guess my question then would be, is it is it just psychology, and that the way the teacher handled those two groups of children was different, or was there something more going on in the some sort of metaphysical sense that caused that? I mean, I don't know if I'm making myself clear, but I mean, a psychologist would say, oh, sure, that's what happened because she treated those kids differently.
Mm-hmm.
And a metaphysician might say, well, yeah, she treated them differently, but also there was some mental thing going on between their subconscious minds or whatever. How do you stand on that?
Well, I think it's both. I think it's that she treated them differently, and I think it's also probably had to do with the images that they received based upon her expectations. Is if someone, for example, thinks, I'm stupid, I can't do this, then if that thought is going through their brain, it's very hard for them to receive the insight from the subconscious mind, like we were talking about earlier, or to be able to have a still enough mind even to be able to reason and to think. And that's a lot of what we teach people in terms of being able to cause change, to cause a change in self-image or a change in self-value, is it's very important to be able to have a clear mind and a clear brain. There are exercises that people can practice to develop that so that you're able to receive something greater or different or more than what you already have.
Mm-hmm. I read about a study that was done, it was probably a long time ago now, because it was investigating if certain changes were made in a factory, would the people be more productive? And what really was learned from the study was that when you study people and whether they're productive, they become more productive because they've got the spotlight on them.
Mm-hmm.
And that may be part of it too. Well, you know, this is a huge idea that we're talking about, where your beliefs, your mind, create your reality, and certainly people who have a victim morality, they believe they're victims, are going to stay victims as long as they think they're victims, because they're going to get back what they think. And so why doesn't the world know more about this? Isn't this taught in school anywhere?
That is a really good question, Steve. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I devote my life to teaching, because I think it should be taught in school. And I know we have a student at one of our schools in St. Louis who has recently retired, but for many years, about 30 years, she taught children, special needs children, and she has had amazing success with kids who have been labeled as autistic, who've been labeled as discipline problems. They have all kinds of labels in the world. And she's been teaching them how to interpret their dreams. And in that, not only has it aided them to have greater insight into themselves, it's aided her to have greater insight into them, to be able to help them. I know of parents who have taught their children concentration exercises, and kids who were labeled ADD or ADHD, rather than having to be put on medication, they've been able to draw out their natural brilliance. So I know that there are other ways that can be used to help people, children as well as adults, and that's my hope, is that more and more this does get into mainstream teaching.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it may be difficult because our society is such that we always believe that it's somebody else's fault. I mean, if you look around at all the lawsuits that come about, I'm thinking of the one, for example, where the lady spilled coffee on herself at a McDonald's and sued them because they didn't tell her that the coffee was hot.
Right.
And she won $10 million. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. Obviously, the woman should have known that. And yet, our society, and I think it's the lawyers, trial lawyers, want to always find somebody at fault, and it's not the person themselves who've done it to themselves, when we know from what we've been talking about that it is. They brought that on themselves. So
Right.
It's going to be a hard thing to overcome. Tell us how we can learn about these things. So the School of Metaphysics obviously is in business and set up to do this, to teach people about these things. What can people do to access what you offer?
Well, we have our world headquarters is in Missouri, and we have 16 branches in some different cities throughout the Midwest. And then we also teach part of our course of study through correspondence for people who live in cities where we don't have branches of the School of Metaphysics. What we teach is a step-by-step program of mental exercises along with written lessons to put these principles into practice. I mean, it's one thing to say that if you pay more attention, you'll have a better life. It's another thing to learn how to pay attention. So we have exercises that we teach people to develop skills of self-respect is the first one, which is what you're talking about, is realizing that everything begins and ends with you, understanding how you view the world, your perspective is what produces what's around you. The second skill we teach is undivided attention, and I think if people only learn that one skill, it would dramatically change our entire world, because people's relationships improve when they're able to give attention to one another. Parents become much better parents when they can give their undivided attention to their kids. It reduces the rate of accidents and improves safety in the workplace. A related skill that we teach is concentration, which is the ability to hold attention as long as you want it on whatever you want it to be on, which is extremely valuable for all kinds of things. Being able to relax, being able to have more time, being able to improve efficiency. Those skills of undivided attention and concentration are the ones that lay the groundwork for the next two skills, which are memory and listening, and we have exercises to develop all of those. We teach people how to improve imagination, to develop intuition and reasoning, how to interpret dreams. You were asking earlier about how people can learn what these symbols are. We teach that to people. We teach how to meditate, and we actually have two websites that are related to the main School of Metaphysics website, and one of those, which is dreamschool.org, is all about dreams. It has probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of dreams on there that have been interpreted that people can study. But people can also learn that in courses, how to understand the language of dreams and how to interpret them.
Dreamschool.org, www.dreamschool.org. Well, that's very interesting. Speaking of dreams, what about when let me ask you this way, can dreams help us let go of someone or something that's passed? I'm thinking particularly if you're in grief, you've lost a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that can help you get over grief?
It definitely can. We have many people who contact us because they have had dreams of someone who has died. And what happens after death is that the person who has died still exists, even though they don't exist in a physical form. They still exist in the realm of the soul or the spirit. And it is possible for them to come to us in the dream state. It's called a visitation dream. And oftentimes, the reason why they do that is to communicate with people who are alive, to let them know that they're okay. And in that, it's usually very comforting. 7 years ago, my husband died, and soon after he died, I had several dreams that he came to me that they helped me in that way. They were very comforting and gave me a chance to say goodbye to him, which I did not have. I wasn't with him when he died. So they can be very rewarding.
I've heard about people getting phone calls from the dead, actually having the phone ring and pick it up and have it be someone on the other end of the line. Have you heard anything about that?
Actually, just recently I did. It's a family that the father of 2 teenagers died, and they actually had several experiences that his cell phone rang, and their dad's voice wasn't on the other end of the phone, but when the cell phone rang, then they received a kind of mental communication from him.
Interesting. What about ghosts? I have one of my aunts who's dead now, but long time told me about her husband had a friend visit one evening late at night and told him about the fact that he had just died, and that he gave him some information about where a will was located, where the key to the safe deposit box was, where certain important papers were, and then the friend left, and of course, lo and behold, it was true. The guy had died and was dead during the time when he was supposed to have visited. Have you heard of those sort of things happening?
Yes, not as often as I've heard of the dream visitations, but I have heard of that. Usually not in as much detail as you're talking about. A lot of what makes it difficult sometimes for that kind of communication to occur is that the person who is alive oftentimes is not receptive. Like sometimes it's related to what you were talking about earlier about belief. If they don't believe that that's possible, sometimes they can discount it, or they say, oh, this is crazy, or sometimes they'll even purposely distract themselves. So oftentimes they're not receptive to it. But it is possible for there to be that kind of communication. And in terms of experiencing it and then letting the person go, that's pretty important, because sometimes people tend to try to hang on to somebody who has died, or they try to hang on to experiences from the past, and that's when people experience what I would consider more of an unhealthy kind of communication, where usually the person who has died, part of their communication to the ones who are alive is that they need to go on with their life and to realize that the person who has died is okay, and rather than trying to hang on to something that is not there in the physical anymore.
Last week I spoke to a psychiatrist, a Dr. Moody, who helps people who suffer from spirit possession or obsession. And one of her patients, the one she learned about this, she had no idea that such a thing even existed until she was interviewing a patient under hypnotism. The patient was hypnotized, who had problems with her stomach, and there were no physical problems that any doctors could find. And what she did was ask the person where this problem originated. And it turned out she started communicating through the patient with the patient's father, who had been dead for some time and had somehow become attached to the woman, and the father had died of stomach cancer. Is this the kind of thing you're talking about?
Yeah, I haven't heard it so much in terms of hanging on to a disease, but yes, holding on to something that really is not relevant to that person in the present.
Yes. What about, let's see, anything else we should know about dreams or whatever? We've got about maybe 4 or 5 minutes left.
Well, I really encourage people to learn how to remember dreams and how to interpret them, because at the most basic level, all dreams are communication from the inner self to the outer self that are telling us about our own attitudes. They're telling us about our state of awareness, and they can help us to live much more healthy lives, not just physically healthy, but mentally and spiritually. And they're so accessible. I mean, it doesn't cost anything to learn how to remember a dream. It doesn't cost anything to receive that kind of guidance. And what people find when they do listen to their dreams and learn how to interpret them is that they experience a great amount of peace and contentment, because they have a connection with the inner self. I mean, it exists to help us, so I think it's important for us to pay attention to it and learn how to use it.
So paying more attention to your dreams, and also you mentioned earlier about really getting in touch with yourself and what's going on now. And it reminds me of a book I read a couple years ago called The Power of Now, the fact that we really only have this moment. This moment is eternity, and we can think about the past, and we can speculate about the future, but there really only is now. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, I agree with that, and I think that, even when we're talking about ghosts and visitations, I think that part of the reason why people experience regret when somebody dies is that they didn't use the moments of now when they were with that person. So they think about, I wish I had done this, or I wish I had done that. So I think that it's very important, for example, with people who are in our lives, to make sure that we let them know that we love them, to make sure that we communicate what we want to, that we don't put things off and say, oh, well, I can't really say this now, or because you never know. You may never see that person again, or you might see them again. But once the present moment has passed, you don't ever have that moment again. So I think it's very important to live completely, to be, as generous as you can, as giving as you can, to really give your full attention to what's right here in front of you right now.
I think anyone who's lost someone, and this was true with me and my father, has lost someone without really having a chance to say goodbye or to tell them how they feel or what they think would say that is excellent advice. Thank you, Dr. Clark. It's been very interesting talking with you again, and I hope you'll come on the show again soon. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you did, I suggest you subscribe to my YouTube channel. There are plenty of interesting shows already there, and new ones being posted all the time.